Now, rising tensions in the Middle East are now drawing both China and the United States into a growing diplomatic and economic standoff. As Washington pushes Beijing to pressure Iran over the Strait of Hormuz, China is also facing increasing pressure over its continued purchase of Iranian oil. RT correspondent Konstantin Rojkov has the report.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is visiting China just days ahead of a high-stakes meeting between Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping here in Beijing. Araghchi has been on a very busy diplomatic tour lately, visiting countries like Russia, Oman, Pakistan, and now China. China has also repeatedly offered political support to Tehran and called the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iranian territory illegal. So there is clearly a strong relationship between Beijing and Tehran. Now, Trump, who appears to be keeping his upcoming meeting with Xi Jinping very much in mind, believes China should use Araghchi's visit to pressure Iran into reopening the Strait of Hormuz.
In all fairness, he gets like 60% of his oil from Hormuz, and I think he's been very respectful. We haven't been challenged by China. They don't challenge us, and he wouldn't do that. I don't think he'd do that because of me. But I think he's been very respectful. And we've offered, if he wants to send the ships to the United States. I think one of the big things that's happened is I made a statement.
But despite the friendly tone, it's far from smooth sailing in U.S.-China relations. Just days ago, Beijing activated its so-called blocking mechanism against U.S. sanctions targeting Chinese oil refineries accused of buying Iranian crude. Beijing is essentially saying not only that U.S. sanctions should be ignored, but also that there could be consequences for companies that comply with them. For example, by refusing services or terminating contracts with the sanctioned refineries. American officials have already upped the ante in the sanction standoff, warning that secondary sanctions could be imposed on those who ignore the original restrictions. At the same time, the U.S. has submitted a draft resolution to the United Nations Security Council focused on shipping security in the Strait of Hormuz. Here's what U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to say about that.
And I think to both the Chinese and the Russians, I would argue and have argued that it is in their interest for that resolution to pass and for pressure to be brought on Iran, because it is in their interest not to see international waterways, including the Straits of Hormuz, be closed down and cause economic chaos to dozens and dozens of countries around the world.
Also, Beijing instructed its firms to ignore U.S. sanctions. Could you also address that?
Well, I'll direct you to Treasury on that front. There are options that we have. If you ignore our sanctions, you're going to face secondary sanctions. And I don't have an announcement for you on that today, but we don't do these things, for symbolic purposes.
China wants stable ties with both Iran and the United States, but with tensions in the Middle East rising, shipping routes under pressure, and sanctions threats flying back and forth, staying on good terms with everyone is becoming harder by the day. I'm Konstantin Rojkov reporting for RT from Beijing, China.